First of all, I want to welcome you, as Jenny did, to the third in our webinar series, and to wish you all a happy 2010. I understand from the people on the news that that's how we're supposed to refer to this decade now. And I wanted to take a moment to ask if anybody had any questions or comments from the last two webinars briefly. I had received some homework assignments, and the ones that I received before today I responded to, and I will respond to the other ones if they come in now after this call. But did anybody need any clarification? I know that for myself, every time I've taken a course, it made a lot of sense while I was in the room, and then when I went back and I looked at my notes or I tried to do it, sometimes there were questions. So did anybody have anything like that? I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. Somebody must not be muted or must not have their speakers off. Okay, that sounds good. So not hearing any questions, let's go on. So just give me one moment, and I will be putting the PowerPoint up. Okay, ready to roll. I'm just checking to make sure that I can see the chat. Yes. Okay. So this is our third part in the series, and this is when we're going to go from outputs and outcomes, which we talked about last time, to indicators, to measurement. How do we evaluate our progress? And the little subtext that I put on this was, now that you know where you're heading, how do you assess your progress? So today what we're going to cover is, we're going to put it all together. We're going to use logic models, which we'll talk about in a moment, to plan, implement, and evaluate your PD programs. We're going to talk about from outputs and outcomes to indicators. How are you going to know success when you see it? And then, what are some of the tools? What are some non-formal, informal, and formal techniques for evaluating both processes, how you're doing it, and products, what you do? How you can use your findings to make mid-course corrections, and how you can communicate your findings to your stakeholders. In practical terms, what we're going to really be doing is clarifying the steps between your PD efforts and better learning outcomes for the participants. As a noted evaluator, Robert Stufflebeam, said, the purpose of evaluation is more to improve than to prove. And so I'd love to keep that kind of as our mantra in thinking about what our goals are. In order to do that, in order to clarify these steps, we're going to use a logic model. And a logic model is just a tool. It's a tool for program planning, for program implementation, and for evaluation. And furthermore, it can be used to communicate accomplishments and to identify the areas that need improvement. It's not all something so mysterious. It's just a tool, a technique that we can use. So it's an illustration. It really is a picture. It's a graphic illustration of the connection between what an organization or a program does, in other words, our activities, and what we hope to achieve, our goals and outcomes. And there are various formats. There are a lot of different ways to do logic models, to draw them out. Some of them look like flow charts, which really are the idea is to capture the connection between articulated outcomes and what you do to achieve them and what it takes in order to produce the activities in order to achieve the goals. Or it could be a more concrete example, illustration, which is in the form of a table. Either way, what it does is to represent the progression that I just mentioned about how the different parts of a strategy connect to each other. It's not meant to be a detailed blueprint of what you must do to achieve your goals. That's your action plan. It's more like the architect's scale model that gives you a sense of how the pieces all fall together and what it's going to look like in the end. It's a place to really outline the major steps and what your major strategies are, see how they fit together, and then analyze whether, if you take a step back, whether they really can be expected to get you to your goals and can add up to the changes that you want your stakeholders to see. And I'm bringing back up where we were, which is, it's really an illustration. And we talked about the different formats, and we talked about the progression. And what I was elaborating was that think about this as kind of an architect scale model of your program so that you can see the whole, and really we can use it then to analyze whether all the parts add up to the whole, where the gaps might be, if you're missing some walls or some floors, or if there are other things that need to be built into the structure, even in terms of electricity and plumbing, to be the dead metaphor. So here's one format of what a logic model might look like. As you see, we start out at the beginning, which is presenting the problem or the challenge, and then we go on as you move right through the inputs, the resources, or the assets are that need to be invested, the outputs, which are the activities and the products that are produced, and the level of participation, and then finally what we spent so much time working on last time, which is an articulation of the outcomes, what success will look like in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. Some people use logic models in program planning by doing a backwards design, which means planning backwards and implementing forward, starting with an articulation of outcomes and then backing into what are the activities that are most likely to help you achieve those outcomes, and then what are the inputs or the resources and assets that are needed in order to be able to put on those activities, create those products, and thereby achieve the outcomes. So that when you implement, you're going to implement from accessing the resources, etc. But the planning is a backwards by design process. So here's a little tip about creating logic models. It comes from the Harvard Family Research Project, but I can tell you that it really bears out from personal experience. A logic model is a terrific tool for bringing everyone on board. I would probably recommend that you don't call what you're doing by its name. You don't say to your stakeholders, to the program providers, or the program participants, or your funders, we're going to be developing a logic model now, but engaging them in this thought process gives them an insight into how to make it happen, and it can help you access the resources to make it happen, and it also will give you real insight into what you're being held accountable for.